Okay, it's 9:30.
Hey, Charles.
All right, so we're gonna try to get this thing started. First of all,
Okay.
we need to tell all those people that are not from around here that it's snowing and sleeting outside right now where we all live in Chapel Hill. This class was originally scheduled, Priscilla, right? What, online? Now, for some reason, okay, we were going to be online. Then we're going to be because of COVID, and then we were going to meet here. It's snowing, so we're winging it right now, folks. And the other thing that just happened a few minutes ago that's never happened on my computer, and that is I lost complete sound and video. So I'm now working on a laptop, and the presentation's over here on the desktop. So we're going to try to get this thing to work, okay? And I'm trusting we can do that. But Meredith, if you are in charge of prayer, so if you get a prayer going real quickly, it needs to be a silent prayer, however.
Well, either whatever works, Meredith, the best. Whatever works. Fine with us.
So,
does work.
And there is a slight possibility, Susan, that we may be talking this thing all the way through, and I'm not able to get that to work, but we'll see if we can get it. Okay, all right. So, all right. Got to figure out which computer's running this thing. So anyway, welcome everybody, and it's a good homecoming for a lot of friends that we've seen before and some new folks that we haven't met. This is a program this is a class that we've looked forward to for a long time. Now, first of all, let's give you an overview of the class. I'm sorry I can't get my video working on my computer, but you can see it on the laptop here. Okay, so
okay.
So the class is titled up above our heads, the healing power of old time music. Okay, now, so the question sort of is, so what's hidden, and we're going to come to that, but there are going to be a number of things that we're going to do that will help us over time disclose that. Now, but let me just give an outline of really what's going to happen during this class over the next 6 weeks. Of course, there's today, and we're going to get that going. It's going to lay the foundation for everything else that occurs afterwards. Next week, we're very excited. We have a very accomplished musician, writer, player, singer named Joe Newberry. Bob Winstead, probably, he may be the only person on this call who's ever heard of Joe Newberry besides, oh, good, Karen. Thank you. I got it out there.
And don't tell Joe that. I mean,
yeah. Okay. I can't. Okay. So, and we won't tell Joe that. No, but he is an amazing person, as you will see. All right. Then, the following week, we have Marcia Harris. She's a Native American flutist, and there's a reason why we have a Native American flutist in a program called Old Time Music, and that will be disclosed as we go through it. Then in the fourth class, our own beloved pastor has an uncle named Ernest Tubb. And Ernest Tubb was one of the greatest old-time, what do you call it, Grand Ole Opry personalities. He had the Texas Troubadours. He really was a person that moved that music forward. And we're going to hear about Uncle Ernie from Marcus in our fourth class. Then in our fifth class, as exciting as we got Jim Watson, the Red Clay Lamp Ramblers, and a lot of other things that Jim has done, and Alice Gerard, who's just an amazing musician. They're going to appear, both of them are going to appear with us on the program. So you'll see and hear them. They're going to sing a lot for us and tell their own story. And by the way, we're going to ask you to tell some of your stories too. So not everything, by the way, just some. Okay. Then we're going to wrap it up with the focus on Binkley a little bit. And we'll allow you other fallen Baptists out there to participate in other ways. But we're going to feature Tanya Hamp. She has a good story to tell, and we're going to hear it. So that's sort of the outline of the whole class. We'll get you these names and everything all written down so you can see exactly who we're talking about here. But then this question of really what's hidden. And here is what I'm going to capsule what's hidden. And then Susan has this great quote. I'm telling you, she needs to put this out there. But what's hidden, and what I had no idea was true myself when I started this class even. And because Susan's been a great teacher for me in introducing me to some literature that I did not know existed, and some history of music that I didn't know was true. But what's hidden is the long, deep, centuries-old engagement of the Black population and the Native American population in the development of and the refinement of music that, since we're all white on this program, that we would know as white music. But it has roots that are deeper and have been significant. So this is not an attempt to be patronizing in some weird way. We're trying to speak the truth about the history of music. I think, Susan, what is your quote? What is your quote about this?
Well, hi, I'm Susan, and I see some new arrivals. Tanya Ham is here. She's going to be featured in our very last class as one of our Binkleyite old-time gospel band group members. And I see Bob Winstead, who can play anything you put in his hands, probably spoons and kazoo as well. And welcome to everybody. The big quote, this whole class, I just had to get this class started, and I talked to Marcus, our pastor, in May of 2020, when we thought that, well, it was, 2021. We thought things were lifting with regard to COVID. We've been over a year, in very dire circumstances with no vaccine in sight most of those times. But I talked with him about doing a class on old-time music and the healing power of old-time music, since we have an old-time gospel band in our congregation that has met regularly for years. And I have loved, and it is a passion of mine, to look into and promote the history of old-time music, but also to play it. I've been playing this kind of music since I was at least 10 years old. I've been singing it even before that with my sisters. My older sister taught me how to play the guitar when I was 12, and we got together, and she was a hippie of the folk music revival movement, and which coincided with the civil rights movement of the 60s. And we played at hootenannies, we played in marches, we did protests together when I was a teenager, and she's about 4 years older than I am. She's been invited to this. She lives out in Colorado. I hope she can come, but it's much earlier there than it is here. And I realized over time, and I've experienced this in a million different ways, that there is a hidden story of old-time music. We usually think of it as predominantly white, from England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Northern Europe, having come over to the Appalachians and you know, fiddles and banjos and stuff. But white, there's a predominantly white narrative going on in our entire nation and country, in case you haven't noticed. And part of that white dominant narrative is that this music, this music, music of the people is white, basically. Country music is white. However, that's not true. The native, especially in the South, the Native American and Black influence, African and African American influences are like huge strings or huge roots of this tree of country music that I've begun to call old growth music. That's funny. That's, you know, anyway. And I realized that this hidden story is very important to the understanding of the music, but also to the understanding, as we are beginning to see more and more, understanding and awareness of what our nation is founded on and what has sustained and made our nation successful to the extent that it has been. We are finding out about hidden stories of Black people, Native Americans, Asians, other groups who have contributed to our country and made it a true, as best we can, democracy. And the music has been a part of that too, in that same vein, so that I realized that the hidden story of old time music, it is within that hidden story that the healing power lies. You can find it in there over and over and over again, from the beginning of our nations or our lands founding or beginnings, and it goes all the way through our history, and it still holds true today, that it's within looking at the healing stories, I mean the hidden stories, in that diversity is where our strength lies as a democracy. In that diversity is where our strength and nurturing comes, in creating and sustaining bonds of community and togetherness and support and joy among each other, and identity, and about 16 other things. So it's the hidden story. The hidden story contains the healing power. And that's what we're going to talk about in different ways, looking at it in different ways. Through Charles is getting the slideshow ready.
I'm doing
throughout
this
course.
Okay.
All right. So.
All
right. So what's next, Charles?
Okay. So can you see this on your screen? Can everybody see something on your screen that's different now? Okay. So again, I'm working with two computers, and I think what I'm going to do, if you can see this okay, I'm just going to stay right here in this mode rather than a full PowerPoint, because I do not want to lose where we are.
I can see it.
Okay. So I think we need some people to, Collins and maybe some others, to mute your computers so we won't hear the noise in the background. But let's go above. Let's go now from this opening slide to these synonyms for old time music or traditional American music. And so because these are also, all of these are also old time music right here in many ways. If we think about early rock and roll, I could probably give a quiz and some of you would know this. If you just think about Elvis Presley's first songs that made him famous. I think Susan, you and I have done this. I've shared with you that I know exactly where I was the first day I heard "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog." All right,
Elvis knew it.
I think of that as rock and roll, but and it is, but that song is borrowed from a black person, okay, who had already recorded that song and but had not made a hit of it, but he did. And Susan, anything about this particular slide you want to add on to just commentary about the synonyms for old time music?
Yes, thanks, Charles. Yes, I wanted to make sure that when you hear me or Charles or anybody refer to the music as traditional American music or folk music or country, you know, or even blues or gospel, all of these, blues and gospel, are types of country music, of old time music, but they're all synonyms. So I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that we were fluid about this use, and we're really talking about traditional American folk music of different types. Those categories like gospel or blues, you'll see in a moment, were solidified or codified by the recording industry in the early teens and 1920s. Before then, people gathering together in their little communities and bringing probably some food, you know, for the covered dish, and sharing that and playing music together, which we still do today. Those people did not say, "Oh, well, that's a gospel song," or "Oh, that's a blues song," or "Oh," they were just shared songs, shared parts of the history and the identity and the love of music that community traded and shared and back and forth.
Yeah, now there's some categories that we don't have on here, and one of them is related to what Susan just said. That is the term hillbilly music.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So that was an invention of the recording industry. Okay. So they put things in different categories. What we don't have on here is jazz. I mean, but that has origins in some of this traditional music that Susan's talking about. So we didn't put everything on here, but there's a lot. And
everything has origins in old time music.
Right. But we're just trying to point out that we're not just talking about country, okay?
Yeah, right.
Other things.
Burns did that.
All right. So let's go up to this particular slide, and this has a lot of North Carolina in it. But the title, again, we want to keep reinforcing. From the beginning, it's been white, black, and Native American. We'll talk about that first.
Yeah, I'm home.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The
reason I'm calling is
a mute.
So does the nurse expect
Maria,
that we are en route?
Just a minute. Maria.
No.
Okay.
No, I was en route, and then I
computer.
talked to her a second time, and I told her that.
Okay, I muted her. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Let's go.
So
talk to us about some of these people, Susan.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I could all day long, but these people are, you can see in the captions below, some of the important figures in the development of old time music.
Next, he doesn't know about presenter view.
All right, there's Jan. Hey, Jan.
Charles, could you just mute everyone other than you and Susan, please?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to have to do that.
I think they don't realize. Yeah. And they've got, some of these people are nurses and nurse midwives, you know, and when it snows or ices and sleets over, that's the perfect time to start having a baby or needing to nurse a baby, you know, whatever. So in this slide, we're looking at some of the figures that are prominent in old time music from this diverse perspective of how important Black people were in contributing, and Native Americans as well as whites. On the top left, you have a white Appalachian string band, the Palmers, who have recorded a little bit, but it's neither here nor there for them. They are a family that sings together. Then in the next slide over is Leslie Riddle and Sonny Terry of Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee. Leslie Riddle is on the right. He is from Burnsville, North Carolina, and was he was a partner of A.P. Carter when A.P. Carter, down below here on the bottom middle, A.P. Carter of the Carter family traveled throughout the mountains collecting folk songs of different kinds, old-time songs of different kinds. Leslie Riddle is Black, and Leslie Riddle from our wonderful Burnsville helped AP find and go into the Black farmers of and townspeople of Appalachia, which rarely have I found anybody that knew that there were Black farmers. and most people were farmers if they lived in Appalachia, or coal miners, or other support things like store owners of that industry. But Leslie is little known. He's a hidden part of the Carter family's history and the history of old-time music altogether. The Carter family has been known as the grandparents of country music. They are ground zero. And in 1927, country music was recorded with these newfangled new inventions of recording and went out to the whole country. Leslie Riddle was not recorded with them. Leslie Riddle was not mentioned, but he went out with A.P. Carter more than 15 times.
Okay. Susan, what's the band to the right? We got Leslie covered.
Oh, we got Uncle Henry, Chief Henry's Indian old-time string band right there, 1927 as well. He was, and then we've got Link Ray, Cutie Pie from Dunn and North Carolina, who was the songwriter who played and is responsible for the power chords of rock and roll. He had a hit called Rumble that was so provocative, even though it was an instrumental, it didn't even have words, that it was banned from the radio. He is Native American. He is a Shawnee from, full-blooded Shawnee from Dunn, North Carolina. And he did this in the very early 50s. Rhiannon Giddens, you know.
She's on the left-hand side.
Yeah, that's the next one. Yeah. Rhiannon and Giddens. We'll have her later on if we have time in this show. She's African American. Her parents, one was white and one is African American, and she is a scholar of old time music, plus a conservatory trained musician and singer of old time music. Even though she could sing opera, she could have done anything. She went to Oberlin Conservatory of Music. She's from Greensboro. Okay, we're going to talk more about her and Doc Watson, the next one on the slide. The guy in the background of Rhiannon's photo is her hubby. His name is Michael Newton, and he's written about how the Scots-Irish, especially the Highlanders, really identified with and became part of the Native American culture in early American life or history and its music. This is where the big connection started, back before the Revolutionary War. Big connection between Native American and Scots-Irish music. Okay, in the middle there is, well, and Doc Watson's from Deep Gap, North Carolina, and he has said often in many interviews in his international travels to play this old time music, he has said many times that he was greatly influenced by the Native Americans and musicians he knew, that his grandfather knew, and also black musicians that his whole family, who went back generations in the mountains of North Carolina, knew. The Carter family were recorded in Bristol, Tennessee / Virginia in 1927 by Ralph Peer, who was in charge at RCA for gathering all this, quote, ethnic music and dividing it into, well, he had to do this at RCA, race music and folk music. The race music was for black audiences. The rest of the music, including the Carter families, even though it was influenced by black and Native Americans, was the, quote, music, you know, the dominant music and this was folk music, and it was a huge hit across the land by radio, the new invention of radio.
All right, we're going to get to that. I don't want you to get ahead of the story here. Now, who's that person on the right-hand side?
That's Elizabeth Cotton. She was born and raised in Carrboro, North Carolina, which is down the road. And she plays the guitar upside down and backwards because she's left-handed. So, but Alice Gerard, Joe Newberry, and all these other folks, including Doc Watson, have talked about how her music was extremely influential to them in the rhythms that she picked that were innovative and the songs that she sang, like Freight Train.
Okay. All right, which is the great picking song. Let me just mention that what Susan's been talking about is really reinforced just simply, and this is nothing more than just to try to visually express that the primary origins of old-time music, first of all, there were already, you know, there was no discovery. Native Americans lived all over this continent, of course, and they had their own music, and they had different kinds of music in the Southwest and up in the Alaska and the Aleutians, and also in the South. And they had different instruments and different types of music. And we know that as this continent was colonized by the English, the Spanish, the French, the Italians, and later on other populations came during hard times in Ireland. They brought all of their music over to America too and began to belong. But from 1619 and even before, though some would deny it, there were African slaves being imported into this country by the thousands, and they brought their music from the different parts of Africa, the different tribes they belonged to. So North America was a melting pot for, or a blending and a lot of, as we'll discover, hidden music, because only the dominant culture was initially recorded and then later on. Okay. So, and we'll talk about the influence there. Anything more about that, Susan, or is that sort of self-evident and we can?
I'm good.
All right, because one of the things that is true about all of these places, plus some others, is an incredible commonality, which made the possibility of our having this blended music occur.
Hmm.
And Susan?
Oh, and this is the pentatonic scale, which you can, not to get technical, it really isn't. If you have access to a keyboard or piano, if you look on the keyboard or piano, you will see 5 black keys every 8 on the 8-note scale, you know, do, re, mi scale. And when you see those black keys, that is the pentatonic scale right there. You can pick out your tunes, many of them that have lasted through the years. It is a universal scale that's found in almost every culture in the folk music or the indigenous music of that culture. And sure enough, it's in Scotland, which you left out, Charles. That's terrible. where my people are from, Scotland, Ireland, England, and Northern and Southern Europe. You'll find it in the Middle East. You'll find it in Africa, in all the different countries of Africa, in Asia, in North and South America, and Australia as well. And it's a mystery, but the pentatonic scale is very appealing, and it's also universal. We hear it in songs like Wayfaring Stranger, Amazing Grace, Be Thou My Vision, in the Native American song, which was a big hit in the 60s, Water, Spirit, Spirit, Springing Round My Head, and all the Native American tunes and songs that were played on the Native American flute, which is tuned to the pentatonic scale. And then also you'll hear it in rock and roll, you'll hear it in rumble that Link Ray wrote and got banned off the radio because of its provocative nature. And all these other tunes, Motherless Child, Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen, Wade in the Water, all these spirituals too, as well as Jan Tedder's and Jim Henderson's son, who is now a musicologist with a PhD in Maine. His band has a leader from Senegal who has taught them many songs that are pentatonic and other scales that we have never heard before. But the pentatonic one is universal.
Okay. So in looking up the history of this, I thought it was real curious about, they said, well, the very first grunts of the very first humanoids were probably in the pentatonic scale. So it's been around for a while. So here's sort of a timeline of this music, this from the 17th century up till today. So again, this is a recapitulation of what we've already said, the European African immigrants to North America, bringing their folk tales, which became songs, folk songs, and their favorite instruments, like the banjo-like instrument that has been refined, and Bob Winstead has about 15 in his living room right now.
Yeah.
Other music traditions. And so the indigenous people retained their folk ways for a while. Then as we moved to the 18th century, we know that there was the music of subjugated native peoples and shackled slaves pushed into the background. They were still singing it, for God's sakes, and playing it. It's just that it was in the background as the dominant white culture expressed itself in America. But in the 19th century, as we fulfill, quote, the our westward ho, manifest destiny, which was not destiny at all. But anyway, we did it. We're so different that these waves of immigrants coming to America, some of them to get away from, tyrannous governments, and some from poverty, and some from religious suppression, whatever. They brought their own music to America. These morality songs, the parables, they integrated in so many different ways.
And moving on to the 20th century, Charles, because we just barely got out of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're in the 21st now.
So we're just barely into the 21st, I think. But anyway, so the phonograph, which we're going to talk about, the radio, we're not going to mention television and everything else, but this greatly impacted country music, of course, as it became industrialized. And so I guess we can go to here because of the advent of radio.
And records.
And records. Yeah. As a kid, now I think I'm maybe older. I'm older than most everybody on this program, but as a kid, you may have listened to KDKA in Pittsburgh. It was an all-channel station. K is an unusual prefix for a radio station in the East, but it really got its start in Chicago when they moved.
Right.
Moved it to Pittsburgh. They kept the call letters KDKA. And there were other stations. They were cropping up everywhere. In 21, New York got its first radio station. And then because Susan is deeply Atlanta, WSB, South Brother, WSB in Atlanta. And I was over there in Stanley County. And in 1922, though not born, I might say, WBT started. So WSB in Atlanta. WBT.
You were too. Well, not in 22, you weren't. Never mind. I thought you meant.
All right. So in 1924, WLS, the world's largest store, broadcast from Sears Roebuck. They had a ever expanding studio up there, and they started the National Barn Dance, and that was a hit. At night, that thing carried 50,000 watts. You could hear it all over the nation. And almost.
You have pictures, Charles, of the barn dances. It's real interesting to see these barn dance pictures.
Yeah, we're gonna get there. All right,
we gotta hurry up though.
I know it. In 1925, we got We Sell Millions. That is WSM Nashville, Tennessee, and that they started a program, as many other did, called the they were barn dances, but they started something. Has a really interesting name, history, which I don't have time to go into, why it was called the Grand Ole Opry in the very sophisticated Athens of the South, Nashville. They started this program.
Right.
And it is now the longest running rodeo program in history. Right. And I guess we just thought we would add this very interesting note that 25 years after the beginning of radio, the first radio station owned and programmed by African Americans was started in Atlanta, Georgia. Okay, so that's ever so briefly.
Right, and then the recording.
Yeah,
phonograph is, these are some wonderful pictures of the different early record players, but it was invented by Edison before the radio became huge. We played records, and then the records were eventually played on radio. And the main point is that, there's been some wonderful, wonderful documentaries called Epic, from Epic Music, PBS, about the recording industry's equipment and how that changed the whole sound of this music. However, the main thing is that when you get to the industrialization or commercialization of any music, especially this folk music, it becomes photographed, it becomes spread around, it becomes played by the disc jockeys, it becomes sold into categories or by categories. And it gets wider and wider, more and more segregated. And Charles, can you move on down to the barn dances?
Well, I just got to correct one thing you said. Because this is an American thing. You said Thomas Edison invented the phonograph, but if you look right above here, actually 20-something years before he did that, this Frenchman, Martinville, created the first recordings in this phonoautograph in the 1850s. So all we ever hear about is Edison and Bell. But this, I just want to mention that Edison's were on these cylinders, and some of you've seen these cylinders. But Emil Berliner really changed the game when he created the flat record. That was easier to reproduce and market. And this is when the record industry really took off. It's when he made this invention. And then something to play it on. Okay. And I will be willing to bet that a lot of grandmamas and grandpapas of people in this show used to have a Victrola. They sold from $16 to $600 with gold timed. So they were very expensive and very cheap, depends on what. But that opened up the possibility when they moved that big horn inside there and made it a piece of furniture and something that could be portable in the smaller, cheaper brands. The word Victrola became synonymous with record player. And both my grandparents had one. We had one, for God's sakes, when I was a kid. Okay, so now moving right along, and this is, I think, Susan, your thing right here. Okay.
Well, I don't want to read the slides because, for one thing, I can't read them. But in 1922, OK Records in Atlanta, Georgia, of course, recorded a number of blues singers like Mamie Smith and others, Big Mama Thornton, others, and they hit the market or hit the commercial stores by storm, were marketed toward the black audience. It was assumed that only black people were interested in blues by the record industry, and Ralph Peer is a good guy, but he made the same assumptions, and but white people secretly started listening and buying too. And this was called race music for the longest time, these blues and gospel. And what that category was not changed until the late 70s in the recording industry. For the longest time, it was called race music, though no one in the real world who was playing this music called it that. Anyway, there you see Jimmy Rogers, the Carter Family, and Eck Robertson, people who were recorded in the early days of the recording business, and all recorded by Ralph Peer, who went in 1927 after his visit to Atlanta. He went to Bristol and recorded the Carter Family, Jimmy Rogers, and all these other, what they called string band or old time music that hit the world by storm. Okay, can you move to the next slide?
Absolutely. Okay.
All right, here are the barn dances I was telling you about. What do you notice about these? Now,
well, they're on mute, so they can't answer you. But so I'll tell you what they all said in unison. They said, "Oh, these are all white people."
Yes, that's what they noticed, and also there were black people who did dance, and they did enjoy dancing. They were segregated away out of there were some pictures taken of juke joints and dance halls for blacks only, but it was segregated in a more artificial commercial way than it ever had been before. Now, of course, before there wasn't nearly as much industrialization or commercialization, so it's all part of the ongoing evolution of the history. But this, for the longest time, so the more you see and buy and hear white music for white people, the more, or black music for black people, the more segregated the music becomes too, except for in the hidden part of things where the real diversity and the real strength lie, which is what I was telling you about. And then that leads to the real healing power too. Now, the next one is, oh yeah, good. The power of the healing power of old time music. All right, the healing power, the reason I wanted to do this class a couple of years ago was that we've had COVID, we've had hard times, we've been unnaturally isolated. The ground has shifted beneath our feet and people have died. There are over 1 million people. And in America, in the United States alone. And we've had social, political, religious upheaval on an international scale. The healing power of anything we're trying to gather and bring to ourselves to help ourselves maintain our sanity and our physical health as well. This is where the healing power of music, and especially old-time music, comes in and gets to be especially important for community, family, religious, spiritual, and inspirational and joyful reasons. Next slide.
Okay.
And here's where I get, downright, this is where I'm preaching to the choir. The healing power of old time music has been increasingly recognized. I mean, there is a wonderful book just out, a dialogue, a conversation, and a podcast called Renegades Born in the USA, a podcast and book, conversation with Bruce Springsteen and Barack Obama. It's going on right now. It's free wherever you get your podcasts. And Bruce Springsteen says there's a certain ministry to playing this kind of music. And he means old time. He doesn't mean the rock and roll. He's talking about the roots where he got his influences from. Music creates a space of shared values and a common narrative. And we need a common narrative today more than ever. Quote from Barack Obama. Music is, as Bruce Springsteen says, a language of the heart. It can heal you spiritually and emotionally, but also physically. Scientific medical studies have shown that in its soothing properties and its value as increasing your alpha waves, your neurobiologically, you are healed by music that you know and love, that you grew up with, that you first heard when you were young, heard your mama sing it, or you heard it on the radio, or wherever, or in church. This old familiar music, and especially the folk music of your culture that goes back before you were born for hundreds of years, that is especially soothing. That is especially inspiring and especially joy-giving. So that is why old-time music is especially healing in two ways, not only physiologically and personally for the person who plays it or listens to it, but also socially and culturally. The groups that play together stay together and they are strengthened by the diversity of who's in the group and the welcoming nature of the group. It has no membership requirements, and the inclusiveness and the diversity of different points of view, perspectives. It all increases empathy. It all increases a sense of identity and belonging, which we all very much need.
Okay, so let's go to, I'm going to get out of the PowerPoint presentation now. And let's see, get everybody back here. Can everybody, well, before we start talking there, we have just a little time. There's one thing that we said we wanted to do. We wanted to play Rihanna.
Well, yeah, and we want to play together, sing together, which is, we only have time for.
Let's hear a little Rihanna before we start.
Rhiannon Giddens.
Rihanna, okay.
Yeah.
If I can make this happen. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Playing an old tune from the 1750s or earlier.
Can you hear this?
I can. Can you turn up? Make sure your volume is up.
Okay.
There is no sea that's taller than that fair.
Can you turn up your volume, Charles?
See my mother, I'm going home, no more to roam. I'm just going overjoyed. I'm just I know dark clouds will gather around me.
Okay.
Ooh.
Nope, I gotta stop it. Okay.
That's Rhiannon Giddens and her hubby, Michael Newton, and they now live in Michael's home country, Ireland.
All right. So I think one of the things that we wanted to do at this time, can you all unmute yourselves, or do I need to unmute everybody? Can you try to do it yourselves? Okay, working. I see Bob, yours is off. Okay. So you've been making comments throughout, and so let's just take a little time to hear from people, anything that came up for you in the sharing of this, observations, memories. For example, I just found my OK record that my grandmother gave me. This is Gene Autry, Deep in the Heart of Texas.
Where's our Texas contingency?
Yeah, that's our Texas contingency. Now, this is one from my grandmother Coble. This is a Stephen Foster. Now, he wasn't allowed to sing this, but it's I Dream of Jeannie with the Light Brown Hair. But anyway, these are some really old records that I have lots of and have remembered playing as a kid. Anyway, what came up for you? What'd you think about it? Bob, I'm going to pick on you. I've been picking on you the whole program, so you got to say something now and say it wisely. Okay.
Well, you already spoke on a lot of it. The banjo, which has become my favorite instrument over the last 4 years, came from Africa. Yeah. And you talked about the pentatonic scale, but every one of those music categories can be played in 1-4-5. So C, F, and G. So in any scale. So it's all really connected in that 1-4-5. I think 90% of the music you could play in 1-4-5. Now throwing in an A minor and an E minor kind of gives you that pentatonic flair. And recently I discovered some modal tunings on the banjo that shouldn't exist musically. It shouldn't work. And somehow these Appalachian musicians, and I think it was African-American influence, Scottish influence, because in Irish too, bagpipes are not on a normal scale either. I think those sounds kind of come from that. And it's just a whole different universe for me, finding that modal tuning. So
and 1-4-5 is called 3 chords, 1, 4, and 5, and the truth. That's what old time is all about.
Right. And it's all music. Most hymns, most gospel, most country, all the blues, rock and roll, you name it. I think there was one musician, what was his name? Oh man, it escapes me. He said he only knew 4 chords and everything he'd ever recorded had been on.
That sounds like John Prine.
No, shoot. It'll come to me later. I'll stop talking now. Turn it over to somebody else.
Craig made some interesting notes. Craig, anything you want to comment about that you put in the chat also?
Yes. South Asia does not use the pentatonic at all. Yeah. And very interesting, in the tribal region of Bangladesh where missionaries from 1600s and 1700s from Europe settled, they're the only group that can sing 4-part harmony in Bangladesh. Otherwise, not. And of course, the Islamic world, they don't have music, but they sing the Quran. That's also not pentatonic. Right. So it's not all over the world. In fact, I think your point is really good. That's what unified parts of Europe, Africa, and America is
and Asia too.
Parts of Asia for sure, like Korea, Japan.
Yeah.
Who is Amy Washburn's hubby? Does anybody know? I can't remember his name, but Amy Washburn, an North American, has traveled and spent a long time in Japan and China.
Bela Fleck.
Thank you.
Bella, yeah.
Those two have spent a great deal of study and travel and getting to know and playing Asian music on the banjo. And because the many of the scales are very similar in the places that they traveled. I mean, of course there are places where it's not, but it is a universal in the sense that you can find it everywhere.
So how about others? Yes, Ruth, please.
So how did people discover the pentatonic? I mean, what's the theory behind why it is, if not universal, so diverse around the world?
Mm-hmm. I believe it's like Joseph
Campbell.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Joseph Campbell said, so we have certain archetypes that each of us has inborn or innate in us, no matter what culture we have. Over time, no matter what time it is or whatever culture we come from, we are embedded with certain archetypal myths, stories, and ways of perceiving. And I include that pentatonic scale and the other scales that Bob was telling us about, which they're all different variations on each other, but the ones that are most unique to me are the ones that Jim and Jan in Africa, Senegal, but they are archetypal attractions or predilections.
Are they found in nature?
In brain, yeah, in nature.
Are they found in nature, like birdsong or
it could
water?
Yes, well, of course. I can't, deny that. I think I haven't done the research about these pentatonic scales or others coming from nature, but I was talking about archetypes within the human brain and the human spirit. But I know that it's very important to realize more and more, and I'm studying this too, and y'all are too, in your earth studies, earth justice, earth ministries, ecological studies, is how much of this is the songs of the earth, is the music of coming from the mountains, the waters, the birds, and other animals like us.
Okay. Craig, you have
just one word to answer Ruth: the ability to harmonize. The other Indian scales you cannot harmonize.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Harmony is important.
Bob?
I heard a great quote that blues is the celebration of the pain of life. And I think, like Wayfaring Stranger, there's this haunting sound. And if you notice, Rhiannon is playing the same drone phrase throughout the whole song. She's not playing the melody. And there's this haunting thing that I think we're all attracted to. These minor chords sometimes just really speak to our heart. It happens in gospel music. It happens in spiritual music. It happens in blues. It makes us feel. It speaks to our soul somehow. And that's what it is for me. Those just haunting, heavy, really speak to your soul sounds.
A lot of people knew Martha Henderson, and one of the things that was really interesting about Martha's decision on the night of her passing, she had Billy Barnes to come down to where she was in hospice and just play music for her. See the physical company. Martha.
So important.
Yeah. Henley. I said Henley. Sorry, Henley.
Oh, she's Henderson.
Okay. I think that pretty soon we're going to be interfering with your ability to take a break and go to church. So we will bid you adieu and say to you that we look forward very much to having you with us next week with Joe Newberry. Susan, won't you close us out with any final comments and let these people go to church?
Yes, I had promised, Libba Wells told us all in the Binkley Church that Linda Bourne's mom suddenly died.
Yeah.
Linda and Karen are married, and they both are stricken by this news. Karen is an active member of the Old Time Gospel Band, but Linda is a community totally supportive in food and spirit, every other way, of the Old Time Gospel Band. So I wanted to say, let's remember these people and send them our love.
I tell you what, why don't we do this? Why don't we just try to, and we'll put you back on mute again, everybody. And what we'll do is we'll bring up a song. Is that song on your screen right now?
Yes.
Can you see a song, Susan, on your screen?
Yes, I see it.
Okay. All right. So I think you should sing us this song.
Well, I think we should sing it together if we have time. Now it's 10:33.
Yeah, well, people will leave, but they'll sing on mute. And if you got your guitar there, just go ahead and play
Sing
us
us out. Well, this is a good song, Chords in the Truth.
Yeah.
Like Bob was telling us. The Pentatonic Scale has both minor and major aspects to it, but this one, Down in the Valley, is all right.
Since sing along, if you can stay, sing with us. If not, thank you for being with us.
I'm going to change it to G.
Okay.
Since we're not singing it together, we were gonna.
Okay.
Down in the valley so low. This is too high. I'm gonna change it to D. Down in the valley so low. Hang your head over, hear the wind blow, hear the wind blow, dear, hear the wind blow. Hang your head over, hear the wind blow. Roses love sunshine, violets love dew. Angels in heaven know I love you. Know I love you, dear. Know I love you. Hang your head over, hear the wind blow. All right, I want to hear some harmonies. Write me a letter, send it by mail, send it in care of the Birmingham jail. Birmingham jail, dear, Birmingham jail. Send it in care of the Birmingham jail. This is dedicated to Karen and Linda because their mama just died today. And it's also dedicated to all who love old time music because it helps you heal. Thank you, everybody.
Go in peace.